The first battle a person ever fights is rarely against the world. It begins in silence inside the mind, where excuses compete with dreams and comfort argues against purpose. Every morning, before anyone notices your efforts, a choice is waiting. Will you follow yesterday's habits, or will you become someone stronger than you were before? Many people believe strength appears overnight. They imagine that confident people were simply born different. They see successful individuals standing on a mountain, but never think about the thousands of difficult steps taken before reaching the top. The truth is much simpler. Strength is built through ordinary decisions repeated every single day. Ethan never thought of himself as extraordinary. He was an average young man with average routines. His alarm rang every morning, but he almost always pressed the snooze button. He promised himself that tomorrow he would start exercising, tomorrow he would study harder, tomorrow he would finally take control of his life. Tomorrow became weeks. Weeks became months. One evening, while sitting alone in his room, Ethan realized something painful. His life wasn't changing because he kept waiting for motivation instead of building discipline. Motivation came and went like the weather. Discipline stayed, even when feelings disappeared. That night, he made a promise. Not a loud promise to impress others, but a quiet promise to himself. Tomorrow, I will keep one promise. Nothing more. The next morning, the alarm rang at 6. His body begged for more sleep. His mind whispered, just 10 more minutes. But another voice answered quietly, if you can't control 10 minutes, how will you control your future? He stood up. It wasn't easy. There was no dramatic music, no feeling of victory. He simply placed his feet on the floor and made his bed. It looked like a tiny action. Yet, that small decision became the first brick in a stronger foundation. Over the following days, Ethan understood something that most people never realize. Success isn't built during extraordinary moments. It's created during ordinary ones. When nobody is watching, when nobody is applauding, when quitting would be easy. Every completed workout, every finished task, every distraction ignored made him a little stronger than yesterday. His friends laughed. Why are you working so hard? Relax. Life is short. Ethan smiled because he finally understood something they didn't. Comfort feels good today. Discipline feels good forever. As the weeks passed, life began testing him. Unexpected problems appeared at work. Plans failed. People disappointed him. Old habits tried to return. There were mornings when he wanted to quit everything. Yet each difficult day taught him the same lesson. You cannot control what happens around you. You can only control how you respond. Instead of complaining about circumstances, Ethan focused on his own actions. If someone insulted him, he refused to waste hours replaying the conversation. If a project failed, he searched for lessons instead of excuses. If fear appeared, he continued moving anyway. Little by little, something remarkable happened. The anxiety that once controlled his thoughts became quieter. Not because life became easier, because he stopped fighting battles that were never his to win. His energy shifted toward things he could actually improve. His attitude, his habits, his effort, his consistency. Every evening, he asked himself only one question. Did I become a little better today? Some days the answer was yes. Some days it was no. But even on the bad days, he refused to give up. He learned that failure isn't falling. Failure is refusing to stand again. Months later, people began noticing the change. His confidence looked different. It wasn't loud. It didn't seek attention. It came from knowing he could trust himself. When he promised something, he followed through. When life became difficult, he remained calm. When others panicked, he focused on solutions. One afternoon, an older mentor noticed him working quietly after everyone else had left. The mentor smiled. Do you know why most people never become mentally strong? Ethan shook his head. Because they spend their lives trying to change the weather instead of learning how to sail the ship. Those words stayed with him forever. Storms would always come. Challenges would always arrive. Life would never become perfectly fair. But none of those things decided who he would become. His choices did. That evening, Ethan stood outside watching the sunset. For the first time in years, he didn't wish for an easier life. He wished for greater strength. because he now understood a secret few people ever discover. The strongest warrior isn't the one who never struggles. The strongest warrior is the one who keeps showing up even after difficult days. Every sunrise became another opportunity. Every obstacle became another lesson. Every small victory became proof that character is built one decision at a time. And although the world couldn't yet see the transformation, Ethan knew something powerful was happening. The battle inside him was changing. The excuses were growing quieter. The discipline was growing louder. And this was only the beginning of a journey that would transform not only his habits, but the person he was becoming. The weeks turned into months, and Ethan's life slowly began to change. Not because the world had become kinder, but because he had become stronger. The old version of himself had disappeared little by little. He no longer searched for shortcuts or waited for perfect conditions. Instead, he learned to welcome challenges as opportunities to grow. One rainy morning, Ethan received news that shocked him. The company where he worked was reducing its staff, and his position was one of those being eliminated. Months earlier, this news would have broken him. He would blame bad luck, complain about unfairness, and spent days feeling sorry for himself. But this time was different. He took a deep breath and reminded himself of the lesson he had practiced every day. I cannot control what happens to me. I can only control what I do next. Instead of wasting energy on anger, he updated his resume, reached out to people in his network, and started learning new skills. Every rejection became another lesson instead of another excuse. Some companies never replied. Others rejected him after interviews. Each rejection hurt, but pain no longer stopped him. Every evening he wrote in a notebook, "What did today teach me?" Sometimes the answer was patience. Sometimes confidence. Sometimes humility. Every difficult day left behind a lesson that made him a little wiser than before. During this period, Ethan noticed something else. Most people around him were controlled by their emotions. If they felt tired, they stopped working. If they felt discouraged, they quit. If they felt uncomfortable, they looked for distractions. Their feelings decided their actions. Ethan decided that his values would decide his actions instead. There were mornings when he didn't feel like exercising. He exercised anyway. There were days when studying felt impossible. He opened the book anyway. There were evenings when fear whispered that nothing would ever improve. He kept moving anyway. Slowly, discipline became less of a struggle and more of an identity. It wasn't something he forced himself to do anymore. It became part of who he was. One afternoon, Ethan visited an elderly gardener who had cared for the same park for more than 30 years. The garden was beautiful. Flowers bloomed in every corner. Trees stood tall despite countless storms. Ethan asked him, "How do you make everything grow so beautifully?" The old man smiled. "People admire the flowers," he said, "but they forget the roots. Every day, I water the roots. Nobody notices. Nobody applauds. Yet everything beautiful depends on work that nobody sees." Those words stayed with Ethan. He realized discipline worked exactly the same way. The invisible habits created visible results. The quiet choices shaped a powerful future. Weeks later, another opportunity appeared. A company invited him for an interview. This time, Ethan walked into the room with calm confidence. Not because he knew he would succeed, because he knew he would be okay even if he didn't. For the first time in his life, his confidence wasn't built on outcomes. It was built on preparation. The interview was challenging. Every question demanded honesty and clarity. When it ended, Ethan walked outside without worrying about the result. He had already won. He had become someone capable of facing uncertainty without fear controlling him. Days later, the phone rang. He had been hired. The salary was better. The opportunities were greater. But strangely, the job itself wasn't what made him happiest. What made him proud was realizing how much he had changed. Months earlier, he would have celebrated only the result. Now, he celebrated the person he had become while chasing it. Life continued testing him. Deadlines became tighter. Responsibilities became heavier. Problems became more complicated. Yet every challenge reminded him of another truth. A muscle grows only when resistance exists. The human spirit grows the same way. The more responsibility he accepted, the stronger he became. The more obstacles appeared, the more confidence he earned. One evening, while walking home beneath a sky filled with stars, Ethan reflected on the past year. Nothing had happened the way he originally planned. He had lost a job, faced rejection, experienced fear, made mistakes. Yet somehow those difficult moments had become the greatest teachers of his life. He finally understood that obstacles were never standing in his way. They were becoming the way. Every setback had quietly prepared him for opportunities he wasn't ready for before. As he looked toward the future, Ethan knew bigger storms would eventually arrive. More failures, more uncertainty, more difficult decisions. But something inside him had changed forever. He no longer feared the storm. He trusted the person he had become. Because true strength isn't found in avoiding challenges. It is found in facing them with courage, learning from every fall, and standing up one more time than life knocks you down. And with that realization, Ethan smiled. The journey wasn't ending. It was only entering a new chapter, one where every challenge had become another step toward becoming the warrior he had always been capable of becoming. Years passed, and Ethan's life looked completely different from the one he had once imagined. He had earned respect at work, built meaningful friendships, and developed habits that many people admired. Yet the greatest victory wasn't visible to anyone else. It was the peace he carried within. One winter morning, Ethan received a phone call that changed everything. A close family member had fallen seriously ill. Suddenly, the routines he had worked so hard to build were interrupted. Hospital visits replaced morning workouts. Sleepless nights replaced peaceful evenings. Life had thrown another storm into his path. For a brief moment, the old fear returned. His mind whispered, "Everything is falling apart again." But before panic could take control, another voice answered, "Stay with this moment, one step at a time." Instead of trying to solve every problem at once, Ethan focused only on what he could do today. He helped his family. He supported his loved ones. He completed the tasks that truly mattered. When he couldn't change the situation, he accepted it instead of fighting reality. He finally understood that real strength wasn't pretending everything was fine. Real strength was continuing to move forward while carrying pain with dignity. Months later, his mentor invited him for a walk to the same park they had visited years before. The old man looked at Ethan and smiled. "You've changed." Ethan nodded. "Life taught me a lot." The mentor replied, "No, life teaches everyone. The difference is that you decided to learn." Those words struck deeply. Many people experience hardship. Few allow hardship to transform them. As spring arrived, Ethan began mentoring young people who felt lost and discouraged. They often asked him the same question: "How do I become mentally strong?" He never spoke about success first. Instead, he told them a simple story. Imagine building a house. If you only decorate the outside but ignore the foundation, the first storm will destroy everything. Your habits are your foundation. Build them before life tests them. Some listened, some didn't. Ethan knew everyone had to make that choice for themselves. One afternoon, a young student approached him after one of his talks. "What if I fail?" the student asked. Ethan smiled. "You will." The student looked surprised. "Everyone fails. I fail many times. The important question isn't whether you fall. It's whether you decide to stand up again." The student remained silent. Ethan continued, "Every mistake can either become an excuse or a lesson. The decision belongs to you." Those words reminded him of his own journey. He had failed interviews, missed opportunities, broken promises, lost confidence. But every time he chose to return instead of surrender. That decision had shaped his character more than success ever could. Years later, Ethan stood on a mountain overlooking the valley where he had grown up. The sunrise painted the sky with shades of gold and orange. The same world still contained problems. People still faced disappointment. Dreams still required sacrifice. Nothing about life had become easier. The only difference was the person looking at it. He no longer searched for an easy road. He searched for the courage to walk whatever road lay before him. Looking back, he realized that every lesson in his life had pointed toward one truth. Control yourself before trying to control the world. Choose discipline before comfort. Face obstacles instead of avoiding them. Live fully in the present instead of worrying about tomorrow. Accept that difficult seasons are temporary. Protect your peace from things outside your control. And above all, never stop returning after you fall. Because the strongest people aren't those who never experience pain. They are the ones who refuse to let pain define them. As Ethan began walking back down the mountain, he understood something he wished he had known years earlier. Greatness isn't built in one heroic moment. It is built through thousands of ordinary choices that nobody else sees. Every early morning, every honest decision, every difficult conversation, every obstacle faced with courage, every promise kept. Those moments quietly shape a person's destiny. When Ethan finally reached the bottom of the trail, he looked up one last time. The mountain hadn't become smaller. He had simply become stronger. He smiled, knowing another challenge would eventually come. And when it did, he would welcome it. Not because he loved hardship, but because he trusted the person hardship had helped him become. From that day forward, Ethan no longer measured success by money, titles, or recognition. He measured it by something far more valuable. The ability to remain calm in chaos. To choose discipline over excuses. To act with integrity when no one was watching. To rise every time life knocked him down. That was the true victory. Not becoming famous. Not becoming perfect. But becoming unbreakable. And so, Ethan's journey continued. Not as a man searching for an easier life, but as a warrior who understood that every new day offered another opportunity to grow, to serve, and to become a better version of himself. The road ahead would never be free of obstacles, but he no longer feared the road, because the greatest strength he had ever built was not in his body, his career, or his achievements. It was in his mind. And a disciplined, resilient mind is something no storm, no failure, and no circumstance can ever take away.